Wedding invitations. Here's your checklist of everything you'll want to include.
Hi, welcome back to Bride Society. I'm Laura and this is Rebecca. So you're engaged, congratulations. You've sorted your guest list, but now you actually need to invite those people. Today's video is all about telling you what to include on your wedding invitations so everyone knows where they're supposed to be and when.
So in terms of when you would send out your invitations, let's start there, because I feel this is a conversation I hear quite a bit. You know, if you search on the internet, the traditional answer would be typically around 3 to maybe 4 months ahead of the wedding. I wouldn't personally go that close to the date. It's partly dependent on whether you've sent out save the dates already ahead of the wedding, because then obviously guests know that they're going to be invited and they've already kind of set that date aside. But if they haven't, then you probably want to give them a bit more lead time with the actual invitation, obviously, because getting time off and peak travel season, all those kind of reasons. And maybe you're just really excited to get your invitations out, you know. So I don't think there's a too early, but if you are going super, super early, make sure that the year is very clear on the invitation. But certainly no later than 3 months before.
And if you're deciding on the style of invitation, now it doesn't have to be this way, but again it could be your guest's first glimpse at what maybe the theme of your wedding is potentially going to be, so it could give hints at the styling of what your wedding is going to be. So you might want to think about how you might tie that into the invitation as well, or you might do something completely the opposite just because you like it.
Yeah. That works too. And then your names, very important. Whose wedding are they coming to? So there's lots of different ways that this tradition kind of gets worded, and how maybe more modern wedding invitations word it. There's not a strict rule about how this has to be. So traditionally, it's the parents of the bride that invites the guests, because historically, traditionally, the parents of the bride pay for the wedding, so it's them then for inviting the guests, even though you still send them and you're the one doing it, but never mind. So, you know, Mr. and Mrs. Smith, like the pleasure of your company, and then their daughter's name followed by the spouse to be. But so it doesn't have to be that way. You don't have to put your parents' names on there. It could just be you were invited to the wedding of Rebecca and Laura, whoever, blah, blah, blah. So, yeah, but just, get both your names on there.
Oh, yes. And be specific about who you're inviting. So, Rebecca and Laura invite
Bob and Clive.
Yeah. Mine went completely blank.
There's no names.
So especially if you're having a child-free wedding, you don't want it to be ambiguous at all. You want to say the specific people who you are inviting. If you are inviting children, write the names of the children on there so people know that those children are invited. Yeah. Because sometimes people think the opposite and assume if the names aren't there that the children aren't invited, whereas you might actually want them there. Mm-hmm. Or if you don't know the name, it's kind of one person you're specifically inviting by name and you want to offer them a +1, write +1. Just so it's really clear how many spaces you're reserving for them and who specifically you are inviting to share your day with you.
Yeah, we've removed any kind of awkwardness later on, or the guests even having to reach out and be like, oh, does that include my kids or not? And no one wants to be in that position. No. So making it clear. The date and time of your wedding. As I mentioned before, make sure the year is clear, particularly if you're more than a year in advance sending them out. Yes, time or timings if you know a bit more already at this point. But traditionally you would have simply the time that you want your guests, like the time of the ceremony. So if it's a full day invitation you're sending out, you traditionally just put the ceremony time on it. if there's space on there, we recommend maybe providing an arrive by time, because I don't know, but every time I get a wedding invitation, I'm always thinking, did they mean it's an 11 a.m. ceremony, or they want me there at 11, or am I going to be now like scurrying in behind the bride at 11? And then you I'll get there a bit before. And yeah, it just, if you can make it clear, make it clear. And perhaps even include a kind of carriages at, so the end of the night, so people kind of can get a good idea of maybe whether they want to figure out getting accommodation, you know, if they're going to need to overnight it because it's quite late, or if you plan to go on out somewhere afterwards, you know, just if you can squeeze in those extra bits, that's quite helpful.
The location or locations, if your ceremony is a different place to your reception, just put the addresses on there so everyone knows where they're supposed to be.
Yes. What they are invited to. So this is something that differs, I think, a little bit between like whether you're watching this in the UK or North America or even elsewhere. So here in the UK, it is traditional that we send out 2 separate types of invitation. You often will get an invitation that's for the full day, so ceremony, wedding breakfast as we call it, but the food part, and then the like evening do as one full invitation, or you receive an invitation simply for the evening do. I appreciate elsewhere you just get it for the whole thing, and that's it. So we have an added layer of complication. So again, make it clear what is the person being invited to. Often you would, if it's the whole day, you would just tend to write the ceremony information and then reception to follow. I personally still find that a bit ambiguous. I would personally like a little bit more information, because I'm kind of going, does that mean evening reception? Does that mean wedding breakfast? Anyway, maybe that's just me. Is that just me?
I don't know. I don't know.
But yeah, traditionally that's what you would write.
I'm guilty of that, so I
probably did it too, because I kind of went with what's traditional. What do you typically put? But yes.
Now all these are very important, but a really important one that I feel like is commonly forgotten, the RSVP deadline.
Yeah.
Now your venue, caterers, suppliers, etc. will probably want final numbers, final decisions about food, etc., probably a month before. That seems to be the kind of the common time. So put an RSVP deadline on your invitation, and don't make it just that month before. Give yourself extra time to chase anybody who might not have replied to you.
There's always
by
somebody.
the deadline. Yes, there is.
Or they think they've done it and they haven't.
Yeah, so build in some buffer time, because you're probably going to have to chase a few people.
Yes. Or in my case, someone who I thought just had an RSVP, but they had never received the invitation. It hadn't come through to them. So yeah, chasing time is useful. How you want them to RSVP. So it might be that you include an RSVP card and even a self-addressed envelope maybe in with your invitation, or perhaps you want them to reply via email, via your wedding website, phone, or just mail, send their own kind of RSVP. But yeah, just making it clear and providing said details in the invitation of how to do so.
If you're offering your guests a choice of food, you might want to include what those food choices are so they can pick them in advance. Well, they'll probably have to pick them in advance. So give them the choices, and on the RSVP card, or tell them when they RSVP that they have to give those choices by that deadline as well. And if anybody has any dietary requirements, things like that, they need to include that in their RSVP.
Yes. And in that RSVP, who? So particularly obviously if the invite has come to more than just yourself within your household, so it might be that you can go but your partner can't, or you're going but you're not bringing your kids, or whatever. So when you write your RSVP, obviously be clear about who is attending or who can regretfully not attend, and the number of guests that is. Just again, making it all very clear.
You might want to ask your guests for some song suggestions, ones that get everybody up on the dance floor, so you could include that on your invitation to include with the RSVP, so people can send in their favourite songs that would definitely get them dancing on the night.
Yes. Also things like gift information, so if you've got a gift registry, that might go in your invitation, would go in your invitation as well, or if you would like a contribution to your honeymoon, or if indeed you're not asking for gifts, again putting a note in your invitation about that.
And then there's more additional information that you may or may not include when sending out your invite. So you might be creating a wedding website, and all the things we're going to talk about now might go on that instead. So you might just want to put a link, inform your guests that there is extra information on this wedding website. Here are the details for that. But alternatively, you might just want to keep it all together with your invitation and send in this additional information card alongside.
Yeah, a little insert.
Yeah. So things like that maybe include like parking at your venues. And like transport options if you're asking people to make their own way between venues, or if you're providing any transport on the day. Yeah,
pick up points, that kind of thing. And yeah, so that might include giving them maps, or like accommodation tips, or you might have arranged like a group booking rate, so there might be a code you need to give to people, or usually when people do that, the hotels have like sort of a deadline cut off for when you need to have made that booking too, and things, so that would be useful information from there.
Yeah. And anything specific to your venue or venues, so do they allow confetti or do they not allow confetti? So people often bring confetti with them, but they might not be able to use it on the day, so it's just stopping them from kind of wasting any money or
throwing it at you and
like,
no.
Or things like, is it a cash only bar or is it cashless, so it's card only, just so people can be prepared on the day.
So that is our checklist for your wedding invitation. So if you've got all those, you are okay, you're good to go, and you can feel confident about it. So good luck with your invitations. I hope you enjoy putting them together and that everyone you want to come comes. But yes, thank you for watching, and for more content like this, we are here every Friday, so hit subscribe so you don't miss a thing.